Καλησπέρα και καλώς ήρθατε σε άλλη μια λέξη εκφραστικής ανάγνωσης εν μέσω κορονοϊού 2022. Πριν μπω στο σημερινό κείμενο, σκέφτηκα ότι καθότι πιάσαμε τον τρίτο χρόνο αυτής της λέσχης, αν έχετε κάποια επιθυμία, μπορείτε να την προτείνετε στα σχόλια και αν είναι κάποιο κείμενο το οποίο μπορώ να το βρω εύκολα, θα προσπαθήσω να το εντάξω σε κάποια μελλοντική ανάγνωση. Σήμερα πάμε σε κάτι πιο σύντομο μετά τις δύο τελευταίες μαραθώνιες λήψεις και συγκεκριμένα πάμε στην μυθολογία του Βορρά της Βόρειας Ευρώπης. Έχω επιλέξει την επεξεργασία που κάνει ο Gaiman στο βιβλίο του Norse Mythology, το οποίο το προτείνω για όποιον έχει τον ενδιαφέρει η θεματική. Είναι ένα καλό εισαγωγικό κείμενο που ουσιαστικά κάνει ένα μοντέρνο retelling των ιστοριών αυτών. Πολλές από αυτές είναι αρκετά γνωστές, αλλά και πάλι έχει ενδιαφέρον και φυσικά ο Neil Gaiman είναι αγαπημένος μου συγγραφέας και τον προτείνω πάντοτε ανεπιφύλακτα, οπότε αυτό είναι μια καλή αρχή ίσως και για κάποιον ο οποίος δεν έχει ξαναδιαβάσει Neil Gaiman, μπορεί να ξεκινήσει από αυτό. Συνδυάζει δηλαδή δύο πράγματα. Neil Gaiman, λοιπόν, Norse Mythology. Before the beginning and after. Before the beginning there was nothing. No earth, no heavens, no stars, no sky. Only the mist world, formless and shapeless, and the fire world, always burning. To the north was Niflheim, the dark world. Here 11 poisonous rivers cut through the mist, each springing from the same well at the centre of it all, the roaring maelstrom called Hvergelmir. Yeah. Niflheim was colder than cold, and the murky mist that cloaked everything hung heavily. The skies were hidden by mist, and the ground was clouded by the chilly fog. To the south was Muspel. Muspel was fire. Everything there glowed and burned. Muspel was light where Niflheim was grey, molten lava where the mist world was frozen. The land was aflame with the roaring heat of a blacksmith's fire. There was no solid earth, no sky, nothing but sparks and spurting heat, molten rocks and burning embers. In Muspel, at the edge of the flame, where the mist burns into light, where the land ends, stood Surtur, who existed before the gods. He stands there now. He holds a flaming sword, and the bubbling lava and the freezing mist are as one to him. It is said that at Ragnarok, which is the end of the world, and only then, Surtur will leave his station. He will go forth from Muspel with his flaming sword and burn the world with fire, and one by one the gods will fall before him. Between Muspel and Niflheim was a void, an empty place of nothingness, without form. The rivers of the mist world flowed into the void, which was called Ginnungagap, the yawning gap. Over time, beyond measure, these poisoned rivers, in the region between fire and mist, slowly solidified into huge glaciers. The ice in the north of the void was covered in frozen fog and pellets of hail, but to the south, where the glaciers reached the land of fire, the embers and the sparks from Muspel met the ice, and warm winds from the flame lands made the air above the ice as gentle and as comfortable as a spring day. Where the ice and the fire met, the ice melted, and in the melting waters life appeared, the likeness of a person bigger than worlds, huger than any giant there will be or has ever been. This was neither male nor was it female, but was both at the same time. This creature was the ancestor of all the giants, and it called itself Ymir. Ymir was not the only living thing to be formed by the melting of the ice. There was also a hornless cow, more enormous than the mind could hold. She licked the salty blocks of ice for food and for drink, and the milk that ran from her fat 4 udders flowed like rivers. It was this milk that nourished Ymir. The giant drank the milk and grew. Ymir called the cow Audhumla. The cow's pink tongue licked people from the blocks of ice. The first day only a man's hair, the second his head, and the third day the shape of a whole man was revealed. This was Buri, the ancestor of the gods. Ymir slept, and while it slept it gave birth. A male and a female giant were born from beneath Ymir's left arm, a 6-headed giant born from its legs. From these, Ymir's children, all giants, are descended. Buri took a wife from among these giants, and they had a son, whom they called Bor. Bor married Bestla, daughter of a giant, and together they had 3 sons, Odin, Vili, and Ve. Odin and Vili and Ve, the 3 sons of Bor, grew into manhood. They saw as they grew, far off, the flames of Muspel and the darkness of Niflheim, but they knew that each place would be death to them. The brothers were trapped forever in Ginnungagap, the vast gap between the fire and the mist. They might as well have been nowhere. There was no sea and no sand, no grass nor rocks, no soil, no trees, no sky, no stars. There was no world, no heaven and no earth at that time. The gap was nowhere, only an empty place waiting to be filled with life and with existence. It was time for the creation of everything. Ve and Vili and Odin looked at each other and spoke of what was needful to do there in the void of Ginnungagap. They spoke of the universe and of life and of the future. Odin and Vili and Ve killed the giant Ymir. It had to be done. There was no other way to make the worlds. This was the beginning of all things, the death that made all life possible. They stabbed the great giant. Blood gushed out from Ymir's corpse in unimaginable quantities. Fountains of blood as salt as the sea and grey as the oceans gushed out in a flood so sudden, so powerful and so deep that it swept away and drowned all the giants. Only one giant, Bergelmir, Ymir's grandson, and his wife survived by clambering onto a wooden box which bore them like a boat. All the giants we see and we fear today are descended from them. Odin and his brothers made the soil from Ymir's flesh. Ymir's bones they piled up into mountains and cliffs. Our rocks and pebbles, the sand and gravel you see, these were Ymir's teeth, and the fragments of bones that were broken and crushed by Odin and Vili and Ve in their battle with Ymir. The seas that girdled the worlds, these were Ymir's blood and his sweat. Look up into the sky, you are looking at the inside of Ymir's skull. The stars you see at night, the planets, all the comets and the shooting stars, these are the sparks that flew from the fires of Muspel. And the clouds you see by day, these were once Ymir's brains, and who knows what thoughts they are thinking even now. The world is a flat disk, and the sea encircles the perimeter. Giants live at the edges of the world, beside the deepest seas. To keep the giants at bay, Odin and Vili and Ve made a wall from Ymir's eyelashes and set it around the middle of the world. They called the place within the wall Midgard. Midgard was empty. The lands were beautiful, but nobody walked the meadows or fished in the clear waters. Nobody explored the rocky mountains or stared up at the clouds. Odin and Vili and Ve knew that a world is not a world until it is inhabited. They wandered high and low, looking for people, and they found nothing. At last, on the rocky shingle at the edge of the sea, they found 2 logs, sea-tossed, that had floated there on the tides and been cast ashore. The first log was a log of ash wood. The ash tree is resilient and handsome, and its roots go deep. Its wood carves well and will not split or crack. Ash wood makes a good tool handle or the shaft of a spear. The second log they found, beside the first on the beach, so close to the first log they were almost touching, was a log of elm wood. The elm tree is graceful, but its wood is hard enough to be made into the toughest planks and beams. You can build a fine home or a hall from elm wood. The gods took the 2 logs. They set the logs so they were upright on the sand, the height of people. Odin helped them, and one by one he breathed life into them. No longer were they dead logs on a beach. Now they were alive. Vili gave them will. He gave them intelligence and drive. Now they could move, and they could want. They carved the logs. He gave them the shape of people. He carved their ears that they might hear, and their eyes that they might see, and lips that they might speak. The two logs stood on the beach, two naked people. They had carved one with male genitals, the other he had carved female. The three brothers made clothes for the woman and the man to cover themselves and to keep them warm in the chilly sea spray on the beach at the edge of the world. Last of all, they gave the two people they had made names. The man they called Ask or Ash Tree. The woman they called Embla or Elm. Ask and Embla were the father and the mother of all of us. Every human being owes its life to its parents and their parents before them. Go far enough back, and the ancestors of each of us were Ask and Embla. Embla and Ask stayed in Midgard, safe behind the wall the gods had made from Ymir's eyelashes. In Midgard they would make their homes, protected from giants and monsters and all the dangers that wait in the wastes. In Midgard they could raise their children in peace. That is why Odin is called the All-Father, because he was the father of the gods, and because he breathed the breath of life into our grandparents' grandparents' grandparents. Whether we are gods or mortals, Odin is the father of us all. Yggdrasil and the 9 worlds. The ash tree Yggdrasil is a mighty ash tree, the most perfect and beautiful of all trees, also the largest. It grows between the 9 worlds and joins them, each to each. It is the biggest of all the trees there are and the finest. The tops of its branches are above the sky. It is so large that the roots of the ash are in 3 worlds, and it is fed by 3 wells. The first root, and the deepest, goes into the underworld, to Niflheim, the place that existed before other places. In the centre of the dark world is the ever-churning spring Hvergelmir, so loud it sounds like a roaring kettle. The dragon Nidhogg lives in these waters, and it is always gnawing at the root from below. The second root goes to the realm of frost giants, to the well that belongs to Mimir. There is an eagle who waits at the highest branches of the world tree, and who knows many things, and a hawk who perches between the eagle's eyes. A squirrel, Ratatosk, lives in the branches of the world tree. It takes gossip and messages from Nidhogg, the dread corpse-eater, to the eagle and back again. The squirrel tells lies to both of them and takes joy in provoking anger. There are 4 stags who graze on the huge branches of the world tree, devouring the foliage and the bark. There are uncountable snakes at the base of the tree, biting at the roots. The world tree can be climbed. It is from this tree that Odin hanged himself in sacrifice, making the world tree a gallows and himself the gallows god. The gods do not climb the world tree. They travel between the worlds using Bifrost, the rainbow bridge. Only the gods can travel on the rainbow. It would burn the feet of any frost giants or trolls who attempted to clamber up it to reach Asgard. These are the 9 worlds. Asgard, the home of the Aesir. This is where Odin makes his home. Alfheim, where the Light Elves live. The Light Elves are as beautiful as the sun or the stars. Nidavellir, which is sometimes called Svartalfheim, where the dwarfs, who are also known as Dark Elves, live beneath the mountains and build their remarkable creations. Midgard, which is the world of women and men, the world in which we make our home. Jotunheim, where the frost giants and the mountain giants wander and live and have their halls. Vanaheim, where the Vanir live. The Aesir and the Vanir are gods, are united by peace treaties, and many Vanir gods live in Asgard with the Aesir. Niflheim, the dark mist world. Muspel, the world of flame where Surtur awaits, and there is the place named after its ruler, Hel, where the dead go who did not die bravely in battle. The last root of the world tree goes to a spring in the home of the gods, to Asgard, where the Aesir make their home. Each day the gods hold their council here, and it is here they will gather in the last days of the world before they set out for the final battle of Ragnarok. It is called the Well of Ord. There are 3 sisters, the Norns, who are wise maidens. They tend the well and make sure that the roots of Yggdrasil are covered with mud and cared for. The well belongs to Ord. She is fate and destiny. She is your past. With her are Verdandi. Her name means becoming, and hers is the present. And Skuld, whose name means that which is intended, and her domain is the future. The Norns will decide what happens in your life. There are other Norns, not just those 3. Giant Norns and Elf Norns, Dwarf Norns and Vanir Norns, good Norns and bad, and what your fate will be is decided by them. Some Norns give people good lives, and others give us hard lives, or short lives, or twisted lives. They will shape your fate there at Urd's Well. Mimir's head and Odin's eye. In Jotunheim, the home of the giants, is Mimir's well. It bubbles up from deep in the ground and it feeds Yggdrasil, the world tree. Mimir, the wise one, the guardian of memory, knows many things. His well is wisdom, and when the world was young he would drink every morning from the well by dipping the horn known as the Gjallar horn into the water and draining it. Long, long ago, when the worlds were young, Odin put on his long cloak and his hat, and in the guise of a wanderer he travelled through the land of the giants, risking his life to get to Mimir to seek wisdom. "One drink from the water of your well, Uncle Mimir," said Odin. "That is all I ask for." Mimir shook his head. Nobody drank from the well but Mimir himself. He said nothing. Seldom do those who are silent make mistakes. "I am your nephew," said Odin. "My mother, Bestla, was your sister." "That is not enough," said Mimir. "One drink. With a drink from your well, Mimir, I will be wise. Name your price." "Your eye is my price," said Mimir. "Your eye in the pool." Odin did not ask if he was joking. The journey through giant country to get to Mimir's well had been long and dangerous. Odin had been willing to risk his life to get there. He was willing to do more than that for the wisdom he sought. Odin's face was set. "Give me a knife," was all he said. After he had done what was needful, he placed his eye carefully in the pool. It stared up at him through the water. Odin filled the Gjallar horn with water from Mimir's pool, and he lifted it to his lips. The water was cold. He drained it down. Wisdom flooded into him. He saw farther and more clearly with his one eye than he ever had with 2. Thereafter, Odin was given other names. Blindr, they called him, the blind god, and Hoa, the one-eyed, and Balaig, the flaming-eyed one. Odin's eye remains in Mimir's well, preserved by the waters that feed the world ash, seeing nothing, seeing everything. Time passed. When the war between the Aesir and the Vanir was ending and they were exchanging warriors and chiefs, Odin sent Mimir to the Vanir as an advisor to the Aesir god Hoenir, who would be the new chief of the Vanir. Hoenir was tall and good-looking, and he looked like a king. When Mimir was with him to advise him, Hoenir also spoke like a king and made wise decisions. But when Mimir was not with him, Hoenir seemed unable to come to a decision, and the Vanir soon tired of this. They took their revenge, not on Hoenir but on Mimir. They cut off Mimir's head and sent it to Odin. Odin was not angry. He rubbed Mimir's head with certain herbs to prevent it from rotting, and he chanted charms and incantations over it, for he did not wish Mimir's knowledge to be lost. Soon enough, Mimir opened his eyes and spoke to him. Mimir's advice was good, as it was always good. Odin took Mimir's head back to the well beneath the world tree, and he placed it there, beside his eye, in the waters of knowledge, of the future and of the past. Odin gave the Gjallar horn to Heimdall, watchman of the gods. On the day the Gjallar horn is blown, it will wake the gods, no matter where they are, no matter how deeply they sleep. Heimdall will blow the Gjallar horn only once, at the end of all things, at Ragnarok. Kan du